Welcome, everyone, to today's episode of Dare to Age Well Now. I'm very excited to be joined by Dr. Kaye Corpus, and thank you for joining us today. And would you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, thanks for having me. So, my name is Dr. Kaye Corpus. I live in Kentucky. I'm a integrative and functional medicine physician. I have training also by trade, I'm a family physician. So, yeah, for the last almost 19 years, I've been practicing integrative and functional medicine in my clinic called Soul of Medicine, and I can go into that name shortly. So I primarily see women in my practice, and at this stage, I see a lot of women going through the transition of menopause, which is amazing. And yeah, I mean, hard and amazing at the same time. So yeah, and then we also have a men's coaching part of our practice as well. That's led by my partner, Rob Kress. So we, look at the body as a whole: body, mind, soul, heart, do a lot of the physical components, but also combine them with the emotional, psychological, relational components as well, which I feel is the missing piece a lot in medicine.
I agree. And I'm going to ask you what I love about this podcast. I get to be the learner. And I had someone recently, I was telling them about this new podcast, and I said functional medicine practitioners. And they said, "What is functional medicine?" And I went, I, you know how you know something, but you don't know it well enough to explain it?
Hmm.
Or you, and that's almost like a deciding factor, right? That the Feinberg approach, I think, is that set degree says if you know how to explain something simply. And I was done. I was stumped. So would you be willing to explain it so that next time I can actually answer the question that I know but can't explain very well?
Sure. So we have conventional Western medicine, as you know, and that focuses a lot on the physicality. So we use medications, surgeries, just dealing with the physical body. That's what, many people are using now in the system. And I'll go to integrative medicine, which is integrating Western medicine and complementary and alternative medicine. So that could mean anything from chiropractic care and acupuncture, traditional Chinese medicine, those kinds of things, and combining it with, Western medicine. So a lot of the thing in integrative medicine is the doctor-patient relationship. We look at the patient as a whole, and functional medicine has very similar philosophies, and we're looking at root causes. So I'm trained in both in conventional integrative and functional medicine, and each one has its own component. And I think combining all of them is really kind of the best way to approach a patient. So when we talk about functional medicine, what that means from a practical perspective is I want to know, is your thyroid issue related to your hormones, related to your gut, related to your stress? Yes, it is. And how do we, test and look at your body as a whole? And the way that I describe it almost is like a coffee cup, and we can infuse all the good vitamins and supplements and yoga and great eating fine to allow the liquid, the tea or the coffee or whatever inside to stay at a nice level, but there's a hole in your cup. So I look at it is, how do we plug the holes and then infuse with the right things so that the wellness, the liquid inside, can maintain its fullness. Does that make sense?
It does. So I mean, in a kind of a duh, I should have thought of this way. You are looking to make sure that all of the pieces and the parts are functioning so that the whole works together
Right. And
instead of
that's
really
kind of the most
isolating just
simplistic.
one
So, in
thing.
the word of functional, so say, for example, somebody came in with GI problems, you can get a colonoscopy or an EGD. That's going to tell you the gross, you know, like tissue or the mucosa, if there's anything on the, most of the time, a lot of times that comes back normal, but you still have diarrhea or constipation or issues, bloating and fullness. So we're looking at deeper levels than that. And how are you absorbing? How's your biome? Is there inflammation? Things like that you can't necessarily see with a camera. right? So we're looking on those deeper layers and how all those processes and metabolic processes work together.
That's fantastic.
Mhm.
So, you actually have a philosophy around aging that I find fascinating. And you say that aging is not really a decline, but it can be a powerful evolution. Where, I just want you to tell me more. I'm like, say more words about that. And like, where's that heart come from?
Well, if you think about it, and I'll speak from a woman's perspective, that, as we age, we're sort of, we're known as this decline. There's not of reverence for an older woman or her in her crone phase. And even that word itself is just like, it sounds a little,
Right.
it doesn't sound
Yes.
very like youthful or flowery or,
Majestic.
yeah. But, that's, I think, women, from indigenous perspectives and cultures, women, older elders are revered for their wisdom. I mean, there was a time and is a time in certain cultures where they are the leaders of their community. And my grandmother, bless her heart, she has now passed, but at 100, she had this like white hair, super regal. Her in her village, she was sort of known as this sort of witch doctor. I mean, she became a teacher. She always wanted to be a doctor. She didn't end up going to medical school. And she was giving like the immunizations, and she would want to be known as the doctor of the town, and she didn't really have the background, but everybody knew that, and she held herself in such beautiful high regard and confidence. And we don't have matriarchs like that anymore. I don't know if it's because women, are so tired by the time that comes around, and it like having to fight for that kind of position, or that, we're just not bred that way. I don't know. But I feel that that's such a missing piece for women to, look up to and look forward to, including even menopause. It's just like, oh my gosh, it would go like, it's this kind of phase where we dread it. And even I would just say, and young girls dreading menarche. It's just like, oh, my life is over kind of thing, where the power of our cycles and the power of our intuition is so useful and so healing. And it's just kind of like the missing piece. It's like our secret sauce of healing the world, where we have to get back to that, because I mean, it's obviously lost. And I think the wisdom that comes out from a woman's soul and her heart is so needed in this world. And I think it's unfortunate that the youth and, our youth is valued more than our aging and our wisdom. So, yeah.
I I love that. When I remember I turned 40 or maybe 41, and my husband was out of town with my youngest, so my older two kids took me to dinner, and they were like, "Mom, how are you feeling about this? Do you feel old? Do you whatever?" And I'm like, "No, not even a little bit." I'm like, in my 20s, I was so trying to figure out who I was. In my 30s, I spent all of that time trying to prove I had what it takes. I was trying to prove that I was enough. I was like, I wanted to try to figure out my place in the world. Like, no, I wouldn't go back to any of that.
Mhm.
And I really love the point that you're making, because my husband and I recently celebrated 31 years of marriage, and I talked about that we fight still. Like, we fought then and we fight now, but the maturity of how we argue, it's so much more productive. It's so much more about how do we together have a better life. And I like, I so would not go back to like the emotional state that I was in our early part of our marriage. And just it was like a roller coaster. I've likened it to when I were in the 20s, especially now having children who are 20 and one that has already over 30. Like, when you're starting out, it's like there's this small boat in the world that you are navigating the world. And so everything feels like these big giant waves. And as we get older and have more experience, more maturity, our boat seems to get bigger. And so we can ride those waves so much better. And then we have to have compassion for those younger than us to that they're still on their little small boats, and so things that seem really hard are really hard to them. And I'm wondering if there's an element of media, not just like traditional media, but if we think about television specifically, when you look at that decline of the matriarch, when they're in community environments, and we're at church potlucks, and we're at church, and we're in whatever those indigenous circles, and we're in community before we could see all of this youth glorified, then of course we can see the wisdom
Mhm.
of the older generations. And anyway, I have no idea how to hypothesize that, but as you were saying, I don't know what has caused this. I'm like, television killed the radio star, right? Anyway, sorry. So you have a back to wellness and a journey to wellness, and really have a very intentional. What is your approach that you use to help women kind of reestablish that equilibrium?
Yeah, so there's multiple ways to, come into my practice. I have programs called what you were saying, Journey to Wellness. Right now, I have something called Soul of Menopause. So,
Mm,
our, what we look at is the whole picture, right? And we spend time initially with their history, with the labs that they've done or studies, and your goals, because where is it that you want to be, and how are we going to get there. So we do testing, and we really take the time to analyze the test. I think a lot of times, particularly in the holistic functional medicine world, I'll say is, it's a lot of testing and a lot of supplements and things like that, but putting the whole picture with the narrative of the patient, how are you feeling? What are your symptoms? What have you tried before, is really important. And interpreting the labs for optimum levels, not just what's high or low, and testing, you know, because they all matter, right? So we look at the gut, we look at the adrenals, the sex hormones, the thyroid, all of the other labs, and we put them together and kind of figure out the root cause. So for instance, if your vitamin D is low, your B is low, your ferritin is low, your iron store is low, it's not just give you the supplement. Yes, maybe, but why? My question is always
yes.
why? Tell me why it's low and where's it going? And if you've taken the supplement, why is it not holding? Or how did you get here in the first place? Those are deeper questions. And what it usually leads to is, from a physical perspective, the adrenal glands, that's always missed. You know, the adrenals, which secrete cortisol, DHEA, this fight or flight, freeze hormone, the stress hormone. I guarantee you 99.9, if nothing's 100%, people will tell me that they've been stressed or were stressed or went through some kind of traumatic situation, or in that chronically, that had driven their body to this point. And if we don't get to that root, you're going to be on supplements forever, the fasting diets forever, intermittent fasting forever, the meds forever. And really where we try to get people is, repairing what needs to be repaired, optimizing what needs to be optimized, and then go live your life. Go travel. Use the sun as your medicine. Use your garden as your food. Do you know what I mean? Because it's really hard
Yeah.
to lug a lot of supplements around, which some people do, but they'll do that until they really change the core of what the issue is, which is often what you said, the not enough, the striving for more, never, whatever, keeping up with the Joneses, and all of that keeps running the nervous system and running the adrenals. So I'm a very big proponent of peeling those layers until we get there. It won't be overnight, but it does take time, and it does take comprehension around that, and it takes compassion of understanding how we operate.
Wait a minute. We've spent years and decades abusing our body, and it doesn't just fix overnight? Surely you just. I think it's
Well,
fascinating.
I mean, maybe it can. And I had a teacher that said once that the time that it takes you to heal is proportionate to the time that it takes you to get to the truth.
Oh, oh,
Mm-hmm.
mic drop.
Yeah.
Mm, I love
So,
that.
so
Say,
whatever that
talk
means.
about that more.
Well, it's interesting
Yeah.
because I mean, I think where I try to really dig a little deeper is like, what is really running your nervous system? Like, what are you afraid of? Like,
Mm,
what is the narrative, the story that you're really telling yourself about your life and about who you are? Because that is running the show right now.
yeah.
People say, yeah, I have stress or I don't have stress. It's really the relationship to that is what we're talking about. And often these things get laid down in childhood, early childhood. And, when we talk about trauma and we talk about, I had a teacher once who also says trauma is not the event that happened, but what happens inside of you because of that. And
Yeah.
because that hasn't been attuned to your needs, because of that is the thing that's running the show. Right. So
Yeah.
these are very different questions that we have to ask people, than just, do you
What
exercise?
symptom do you have?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you exercise? Yeah.
Right.
That
Do
feels
you
so
take it?
rudimentary
Yeah, exactly.
when
I
you're
mean, it
talking like
matters,
that.
but
It does.
it
Yeah. Because that can be a coping skill of how we,
totally.
process that. But I love Bessel van der Kolk, who wrote The Body Keeps
Yeah.
Score. I love his definition of trauma, which is something that happens to you that your body can't make sense of.
Hmm.
And it's what explains how one person can have this thing that is seemingly this horrible thing happen to them, and they legitimately are okay. And someone else has this seemingly, if to external circumstances, minor thing happen, and it takes them out for 10 years, and they become a victim of this, what happened to them, and it's literally their brain has not made sense of it. It's literally like the story they tell themselves about that, the how we process and attune to that. So I absolutely am such a fanatic about that. And I think we don't recognize trauma, and not to become victims, but to become investigators and investigate what that was and how that could have impacted and how that could have shifted for us. So anyway, I love that. We started, actually, you said you were going to explain to us the Soul of Medicine, the name of your practice. So, well, I think we've gotten a glimpse, but I'd love to hear how you decided to choose that. It feels very counter for a traditionally trained physician.
Definitely. Well, I always felt that we are spiritual beings. And what that means,
Yes.
I'm not talking about religion. I'm talking about,
Right.
something that connects us to something higher, whatever
Mm-hmm.
that means for you. And, this is a bold statement, but oftentimes health or unhealthiness is related to disconnection from that source, right? And so these are not new concepts that I'm saying.
No.
It might sound a little weird coming out of a physician's face, mouth, but I think that has been the disconnection, right? And this is
Yeah.
what we're longing for in medicine is some humanity. Can you tell me what my purpose is and why I'm here? Because what is the point of me getting up in the morning?
Mm-hmm.
Don't you think that would cause the adrenals to go crazy and spike cortisol, therefore spike inflammation and decrease your immune system, which, by the way, is the definition of every illness there
Right.
is, right? So, I mean, we can look at it a couple ways. It's like going deeper than the physical, than medicine, or what I talk about the soul of medicine is like I think about medicine, the physical body, this horizontal plane, and then the spiritual as this vertical plane. And it's really this intersection of both. And that's where the point that healing actually happens. When we discover our meaning, understand our meaning, why things happen, not to us, but for us, right? That's when the body can start to the nervous system can downregulate, the adrenals can calm down and come into safety mode. And that's when the body then can respond. Anything that happens in the body is actually the caboose, it's not the cause,
Mm.
right?
Yeah. Oh my God, you're literally like my heart is just like sparking. That's the only way I can define it, is just
Yeah,
sparking. And it reminds me of the idea of like doing the things in life that light us up, right? And
totally.
how we have to consider fulfillment in everything, because I mean, I had a few years ago, I had a super duper stressful job, like crazy stressful. And I was suddenly fired one day, and I was surprised by it. And everybody said, yeah, but isn't your life better? Because you
Hmm.
don't have this stressful job now. And I'm
Hmm.
like, you're totally disconnected. And it was so hard to explain that they were only seeing the pain and not the intense fulfillment. And I'm like, when you are doing your life's work, and then someone has the ability to take that away. Now, I will say I've transitioned and I've made the best of it and I've told better stories, and I'm still on a journey, but you cannot convey the counterpoint of the fulfillment. And oftentimes we see that in people that have very stressful jobs
Hmm.
and that do intense work, that there is this counterbalance of fulfillment. I think that can offset some of that adrenal fatigue that we all see.
So the opposite hormone of cortisol is actually oxytocin, which is the hormone of joy, right? So
Yes.
there you go. So it's all sort of
It
related.
makes
You know?
sense. Yeah.
Yes.
I love that. I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah.
Well, this is fantastic. Thank you, Dr. Kaye, for being with
Oh,
us today. Where, if somebody is interested in working with you, where can they find you?
sure. On my website, kcorpusmd.com, on social media, Instagram, Facebook with the same handle, kcorpusmd. Um, yeah, shoot us a message. We have a lot of things coming up of group programs. My book will be launched hopefully by the end of the summer, called Soul of Menopause. And it does take a more soulful look at menopause, which is, I'm really excited about this platform and talking, about this transition from a different perspective than that's out there. And I'm glad that menopause is being talked about, but from
Yeah.
this perspective, it'll be really interesting. So,
I love that. Thank you
yeah,
so
thank you.
much for sharing. And for everyone that's listening, I hope that you'll join us on our Substack or wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe so that you can hear this fabulous new information as we dare to age well now.